Okay. Um, Once again, I want to thank everybody that is present for our Pancakes and Politics. This is our second year doing this event, and we are still learning how to engage and to connect with this community in Charlotte. And last month, we held this event, and this is the ongoing event that is centered around educating our community and trying to stir up a sense of interest in the civic engagement process. And so whether we have 10, 5, or 100 people, this event is about education. So I do thank you for taking the time to come. And I want to open the floor to Mr. Lopez to come and share about what he does and how what he does affect our everyday life. And then we'll open up the floor for you to ask him questions and get as much information from him in his present service to our community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us again here for Pancakes and Politics. One second. Again, my name is Jordan Lopez. I serve in the North Carolina State House of Representatives. I represent House District 112, which is in the East Charlotte area, from about the Central Avenue, Albemarle Road corridor to all the way out to the Reedy Creek, back to Church Road, all the way to Harrisburg.
May I have your attention, please? Please join the new North Carolina project in Community Room B for Pancakes and Politics, happening now. Enjoy a free breakfast, engage with political officials, and discuss the issues that impact you. Once again, in Community Room B, Pancakes and Politics, happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing. I'm in my first term. I just was elected in November of 2024, sworn in early January, and I've had the privilege of being elected by my freshman colleagues to be the freshman co-chair, meaning in my first term, I was immediately elevated to a leadership position within the House Democratic Caucus. It's a really fancy title for I get to help my colleagues learn how to do the job of legislating while I learn how to do the job myself. But I served as a legislative assistant in the North Carolina State Senate for State Senator Mustafa Muhammad for 2 years before then going on to serve in the Cougar administration for about 3 as a policy analyst, specifically with rural policy. The North Carolina legislature, the General Assembly, if you will, is responsible for a variety of things across our state. We set, most importantly, the budget. We work on a 2-year budget or biennium budget that funds everything from schools, road construction, bridges across the state, law enforcement, security personnel at correction facilities, community colleges, our actual 4-year universities, and a variety of other things. We oversee the departments that make up the state. We fund all the departments of the state, but we don't oversee them necessarily. Some of them are elected as council of state positions. Others are appointed by the governor when they make those determinations. But we fund all of those agencies and the programs that they seek that they wish to provide, services that they wish to provide for the people of North Carolina. We also make state laws. So criminal law is the foundation, or criminal law starts at the state level. Cities can't make new criminal laws, but they can pass ordinances that do rise to the level of criminal law. We set building codes. We regulate utilities emissions and the rates that ratepayers pay across our state. They're not subject to our specific review, but we oversee the board that does set and kind of determine what rates are, or what utility providers, can set their rates to be for their consumers. And then we do a variety of other things. North Carolina is kind of an anomaly in the Southeast, really in the country. We have one of the most powerful state legislatures, more powerful than our governor. They have more responsibilities than our governor. In fact, they find themselves still trying to take power away from our governor when they don't see things going their way. In North Carolina, when I say they, I'm talking about the majority party. North Carolina has been under Republican control since 2010 when Republicans swept both the state House and the state Senate, and they have retained control of both chambers for the past 15 years. So that being said, it's a brief overview of what the North Carolina legislature does. you reach out to your legislators, whether it's myself or another member of the North Carolina legislature, if you have any issues with respect to with respect to state agencies. I've gotten a ton of emails about unemployment claims, a ton of emails about roads that are state maintained or state owned, because we can reach out to our regional DOT engineers and they're very responsive. They usually have a team that they can send out to make sure that we're addressing our constituents' concerns. Same with the Department of Environmental Quality. I've even had one ABC permit request reach out, or one person who requested an ABC permit but was having some issues reach out to our office, and we were able to get that squared away for them. So we do a variety of things. If it touches the state, then the state legislature can help you. And so yeah, we operate in a 2-year biennium for how every session goes. The odd number years, so years like 2025, they're called the long session years. So they operate from January till about the end of July. At least that's what it's supposed to be. Excuse me, end of June. At least that's what it's supposed to be. The past several long sessions have gone all the way on until about September. So we could be in session for a while. And then in even number years, which are also re-election years, we work on what's called the short session, where we make technical corrections to the budget, which may end up looking like taking money away from this program that in the first year just didn't get any usage and reallocating it to something else that has a higher priority or need at the time. In these long session years like this year, we work on our budget. That is what takes the majority of our time, and it is what the Senate just last Wednesday, passed out of their chamber, was their version. Every biennium, it switches from which chamber starts first. In this 2025 biennium, it starts in the Senate, but when we come back to session in 2027, for example, it'll start on the House side. These budgets are several hundred pages thick, and unfortunately, for the most part, a lot of it takes place behind closed doors. We don't really have the most transparent or accountable budgeting system here in North Carolina, at least currently, which is a concern for a lot of folks, because with them being such a thick document, several hundred pages, you have the actual funding portion, and then what you end up seeing here in North Carolina is a lot of policy stuff into our budgets as well. They make it very difficult for you to review the budget in its entirety in time. My colleagues in the Senate, I believe, walked into their offices on Monday night or Tuesday morning, whenever they got there, had two thick versions of the budget. And like I said, they voted on that last Wednesday. So they had about 2 days to review several hundred pages worth of funding priorities, policy changes, and then to request amendments that they could present on the floor to their Senate colleagues to help get approved or not approved. Unfortunately, only one of the 51 amendments that the Democratic caucus on the Senate side introduced were accepted. So that kind of shows you how bipartisanship is approached in Raleigh. But taking a step back from the budget, talking about more of the things that affect Charlotte-Mecklenburg in particular, everybody I'm sure is aware of the new transit plan, or the transit plan in general. That has been a conversation for the past several years. At the moment, there have been 2 bills introduced in both chambers that would fund the transit plan. Because currently, the way it works, in order to pay for this $30 billion transit plan, we'll need a sales tax increase to fund it specifically. Mecklenburg County can't just unilaterally introduce or raise a sales tax. They have to ask the state legislature for approval to put that sales tax increase request on the ballot as a referenda, and then we as residents of the county will get to vote on that, hopefully this election cycle. There have been 2 bills introduced in both chambers, one on the Senate side, one on the House side, that would essentially allow for the county commission to put that on the ballot. One is Senate Bill 145 and the other is House Bill 948. Neither bill has been heard by a committee quite yet, but they have been calendared, or at the very least they have been referred to their appropriate committees. I sit on both of the committees that either of these bills will have to come before, so I hope to see them. But at the moment, we're not really sure what that looks like. When I say we, I mean myself and just a couple of my other colleagues from the Mecklenburg delegation are pretty confident they're going to actually try to stuff the transit plan in the budget just to entice more House Democrats to vote for it, because anytime you get a couple of Democrats to vote for a Republican budget, it makes it a lot harder for our Democratic governors to veto it. We could talk a lot more about the transit plan if we have any questions afterwards, because I know everybody has different looks on or different opinions on that one, but that's a major project that we're working on for Mecklenburg County and Raleigh currently. I mentioned before the Senate passed their budget last Wednesday. I will say just some of the things that they are doing with their budget. We're running out of money as a state. About several years ago, the North Carolina legislature approved tax cuts from both the personal income tax rate, cutting it from what it was, I believe it was 4.6 thought I had those notes here. It was 4.75 or 4.25. They're going to cut it all the way down to a flat 2%.
Eventually.
Eventually, it didn't all happen at once. They set up different triggers to where each year it will go down a bit further. This year it's 2.25%. And then, sorry, no, it's not 2.25%, it's 3.25.
I don't remember what it is, but I do know that, people keep asking about why can't we talk about why we can't impose one tax rate for businesses and one tax rate for people with higher incomes. It's all lumped in.
From the personal income tax side, we have what's called a flat tax. We don't have a progressive tax system anymore. That was eliminated. One of the first things that they changed when Republicans swept the House and the Senate, back in 2010, was switching from our progressive tax rate system to a flat tax. Said to be more fair, but in reality, it just means that poor people end up paying a higher percentage of their income than rich people. On our corporate income tax side, corporations their income is taxed in North Carolina. We, even up until these tax cuts were implemented, North Carolina had the lowest corporate income tax rate in the country out of every state that levies a tax. And now we're on our way to fully eliminating that tax. So we are decimating our sources of revenue, but our state is growing. It's one of the fastest growing states in the country, meaning we have more people that we are serving, more services that we are providing, and our expenditures are going to only continue to grow while our yearly revenue is only going to continue to fall. And it's projected by 2027 we'll be operating at a deficit. So there are a lot of really difficult decisions that are getting ready to have to be made. Myself and Representative Terry Brown, who's another Mecklenburg member, he and I introduced a bill to freeze our corporate income tax rate at 2.25% to at least maintain several $100 million of tax revenue a year. That bill was referred to rules, which in the legislature basically means it was thrown in the trash can.
Okay, I have a question, and I'm sorry to interject.
No problem.
But it's a question just hit my mind. With everything that you are sharing that is vital to our understanding, I wanted to ask how are a lot of the major nonprofits, state and federal funded organizations that impact a lot of our underprivileged communities and things of that nature, from a democratic standpoint, what is some of the strategies that your office and I say from a democratic standpoint is being done to try to engage and help bring some resolve or some relief to people who might be experiencing with a lot of these cuts and a lot of things that are happening, especially over the last 3 or 4 months. It's been a lot of drastic changes. How is there a plan in place to help mitigate some of the transition that is happening in our Black and Brown community? Not saying that's the only thing that matters, but that's where a lot of the disparity is hitting. What's the plan for how that's going to be helped to support kind of some of the hemorrhaging that's happening?
So I can't speak for every member, but I would say one of the things that I've tried to focus on specifically is food insecurity. It's a huge issue, not only across our city or across my district, but across our city and state. 1 in 6 North Carolinians find themselves to be food insecure. And so I'm sure everybody's aware earlier this year, the USDA slashed, if not fully eliminated, some of their food bank grants. And one of our largest in the city, Nourish Up, but then also the Mecklenburg, I am going to blank, of course, on the organization's name now, but one of our larger food bank providers just had their funding cut, and I mean, more than half of their yearly revenue or yearly funding, I won't say revenue, was generated by Say that one time?
Nourish Up is Friendship Trays and Loaves and Fishes, or is it another one?
It might be Loaves and Fishes. One of the larger ones, they had their grant cut from the federal government, which was over 50% of what they used to operate.
Wow.
And so they came to our office about a month ago and we sat down and talked about it. And they are pretty much begging Republican appropriators to try to make up some of that difference. And I've had private conversations with some of the lead Republican appropriators to ask the same question. And then have gone even further to ask if they will be willing to support some of our farmers market support programs like the Bulb that operates across the city. With directed grants from the state to kind of help supplement their work, because the Bulb is They buy food essentially from farmers markets and then take them to mini markets across the city in communities that are highly underserved and usually food insecure. And so I've tried to take a very specific focus on food insecurity because everybody eats, and I think that's something that I found a lot of synergy on with respect to Republicans, primarily going to the farmers who grow our food across the state. I've worked with one in particular from the West. Seems to be very dedicated, or at least he wants to help, and so now it's just getting it across the finish line. That's the most difficult part of the budget process. Is somebody can agree and say they love your idea, but then it has to go through like 17 different iterations, and it's making sure it's in all 17 versions. That's how you kind of get that funding
Now,
security.
I think that what you just said, food and security, I think that's great, because that's part of the reason why with all of my events that I put on, I do food. Like we have a new initiative that we're starting in high school and college called Burgers, Fries, and Table Talk. And a lot of the students that came to our first Burgers, Fries, and Table Talk was primarily there for the burgers and the fries. Because a lot of these kids leave school in the afternoon, and some of them don't go home to a home cooked meal.
Yep.
So that burger and those fries,
Maybe the only meal.
it was a necessity. Kids came in the door letting us know that, I'm primarily here for the burgers and the fries. And so that's vitally important, and I'm glad to know that your office and what you're doing to try to help in that area.
And that's not the only area that needs help. It's just what I've learned in my first 4 months there is you got to pick a lane and kind of try to really own it. Otherwise, you will get overwhelmed. But I'm sure that my colleagues are working in different spaces. I will kind of close off that question by saying there's also a matter of accepting where we are. A lot of you specifically mentioned Black and Brown communities. That's almost like saying that is almost like taboo in Raleigh right now, to where you will get laughed out of a room as far as being taken seriously if you're proposing an idea specifically for Black and Brown communities because of the attack on DEI, because of the attack on affirmative action, because of their refusal to acknowledge that there are communities across our state that deserve more help than others that have been historically impacted. And so there's also understanding that some of what we prioritize as community members here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, it just does not align with where the Republican majority's agenda is currently. And we're trying to find creative ways to get around it. We're trying to, food, for example, being one, it's not even really creative, that's just a necessity, but trying to find ways to get at the core of issues as opposed to saying, hey, this is specifically for Black and Brown folks. When I'm talking about food insecurity, at least I am talking about my community, which is predominantly Black and Brown, but everybody has to eat. So that's one of those issues where I can find support for a specific sector of the community while also, advocating for everybody.
And you're right. I said Black and Brown, and when you look at statistics and the numbers, the disparity when it comes to poverty, when it comes to welfare, it's not just Black and Brown people. It's a large component that are white components that are suffering just like Black and Brown people are. And so I do think that is something that we have to strategically shift from, because it is a much broader than Black and Brown. But this community that we're sitting in right now is a Black and Brown community. So that's why I mentioned it.
If I can interject, I think that's absolutely correct. So the way to get folks galvanized is to demonstrate that, hey, your policy is affecting me. Like, for instance, the Black and Brown community, not many communities, heard us when we sounded the alarm nationally about these policies. They thought it was not going to happen to me. And that's why you had so many people voting for Trump, because he appealed to what it was, whether he lied or not. He appealed to the people that, were his base, weren't his base. He's not the norm, right? So that's why a lot of people voted for him. So if we can here, at least in Mecklenburg County, and then, because, they call us the great state of Mecklenburg, and he can attest to the fact they don't like us in Raleigh. They just don't. They think that, one, because we're the most densely Democratic population. We're the most densely Democratic county in the entire state. And we have 100 counties in our state. So they don't like us for that reason. So any agenda that is aligned with the democratic process, they're going to find a way to circumvent it, to put up barricades. So if we can focus on getting the people to understand and know that these policies are hurting you, you're voting against your own best interests, I think that's the best opportunity we have of flipping this thing and turning around. That and collaboration together, pulling all of these organizations together. We used to work in silos. You can't do that anymore.
I will interject and say this, because my day-to-day work, I deal with a lot of stuff y'all talk about. He knows this because I had a personal conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
The new paradigm to get progressive ideas pushed forward, you got to play off the key strengths of what get their ears. Low income.
Mm-hmm.
Can't focus on black and brown because, like Jordan just said, they'll laugh you out the room. They'll say, oh, no, I don't care. La, 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 la. You have to talk about it from low income. Low income is a universal term. It don't matter if you're black, brown, white, indigenous. Low income is a common thread. And that's probably the biggest chunk that will perk up anybody's ears, because there's a lot of low income people who was messed up by Helen, and they can't even get their lives back together. Some of them still living in no FEMA shelters or FEMA trailers. That's how you kind of win that. If you're gonna try to close that gap of food insecurity, focus on the low income tip. You might have to caveat it a little bit toward their constituency that they want to vote for them, but you are still caveating toward your constituency that you're trying to close the gap with.
Yeah.
The other portion of it is, when it comes to reaching across the aisle, per se, you have to also remember that the universal thing is, how does it affect everybody? What are the things that affect everybody, regardless of because once they see what you're advocating has universal appeal, they'll be willing to listen to you. But if it's something real niche tied to the Mecklenburg, they're going to go tone deaf. They're going to ignore it, because I know this portion, you probably have heard this, going back to your transit referendum. That's actually going to be pushed for other 99 counties beyond Mecklenburg. There's a version of it been floating out there since late last year. It was pre file last fall. So the point is, you have to get something that they are going to listen to, because they know black and brown is quickly making up the majority of the people who live here. But they don't want to say that out loud because they don't want to acknowledge the obvious elephant in the room. So they're always going to be like, la, 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 la. And that's why you have to come universal with them. If you can universal with them, you can still achieve the goal. Even though y'all might not agree philosophically with them, you get the problem solved.
Now, I know I led with a question, but you were in the middle of sharing some vital information, and we're going to give an opportunity for people to ask questions. But I did not want to cut off what you were sharing, and so I do apologize for that. But anybody who had your hand up, you will get a chance to ask questions, and then I'll let him open up the questions in just a moment.
I got you. I'll get you in just a moment. I'm gonna finish up with just a few bills. Somebody mentioned Hurricane Helene. We passed a relief package earlier in the session. It was about $500 million to go to help neighbors in Western North Carolina. A lot of that money focuses on infrastructure repair, making sure local governments can get their facilities back up in order. Western North Carolina relies heavily on tourism, and if you don't have water running to these businesses, or power running to these businesses, tourism can't return. And so they're really working hard to get that back together. Some of the money is going to get folks either to stay in their temporary housing situations, or to hopefully get back to their homes. I believe the total number that was estimated they need in Western North Carolina was somewhere around $7 billion. Actually, no, excuse me. It's more than $7 billion. Maybe I'm thinking $70 billion. Excuse me. It was more than what we make in our state revenue annually. So we can't afford to do it all in one hit. We need the federal government to step up to help us. But as a state, we also should be doing more. Could be doing more. Governor Stein requested $1 billion worth of relief. We sent 500 million. And that goes back to me saying earlier, we're running out of money as a state, and they're trying to get creative with how to plug some of those gaps. We will see later on this year, likely see, a video lottery terminal VLT bill, which essentially is those fish arcades. They're going to probably try to take a swing at regulating those to create a new revenue generating source. Their budget that was passed out of the Senate included a 36% tax increase, or excuse me, a 100% tax increase on sports betting and what you're taxed on that. Again, another way for them that they're trying to generate more revenue. And I want to say all of this. Remember, we're fully eliminating corporate income taxes. So like they're letting corporations off the hook altogether with paying income tax, but they're trying to find different ways, whether it be if you are a sports bettor. I don't personally do it myself, but I know a lot of people who do and are outraged that they're proposing a 100% increase on taxes for sports betting, and then a variety of other revenue generating sources that they're going to have to take a look at over the next few years because again, we're running out of money. And then just a few bills that I want to bring up to attention. House Bill 171 is an anti-DEI bill. Mentioned their attacks on DEI and just the overall principle of what DEI is. They've turned it into a catch-all phrase for we're gonna prefer to hire Black and brown folks who may or may not be qualified for these jobs, and that's just not what that is. DEI has never been about simply ignoring somebody's qualifications, but that is what they have turned it into. And this bill would essentially make it illegal for state and local governments to use any DEI policies or practices when making hiring decisions or even promoting it as a thing with your agency or your organization. Somebody like myself as an elected official, if I hired somebody and they felt like it was a DEI hire, I could be fined, I could be charged. Like it's a pretty dangerous bill with respect to how we as individuals are choosing to hire who we choose to hire based on merit. However, they pulled the bill twice. We packed the gallery in the State House for 2 days straight because they were supposed to vote on this bill. And on both days, the speaker looked up, saw an audience full of people that disagreed with their work and pulled the bill. Last week when we were in session, it was supposed to be heard on Tuesday. They pulled it again, and then by Wednesday it was re-referred to rules, which doesn't mean that it's gone for good because they can bring things back whenever they want to, but it does mean that it's been put on hold for now, so we might not have to worry about it. House Bill 127 is a voter registration drive sample form bill. It would essentially make it to where if you are, as an organization, have voter registration drives, which we know in Black and brown communities specifically, are very successful ways of catching people where they are and getting them registered to vote, making sure they're aware of an election coming up. They're making it to where if you do those, you have to do a sample form as you're registering voters, and then you have to tell voters to go register for real this time at the local board of election, or they can request their board or request a registration form. It's just one more barrier.
Say it again. Which bill is that?
House Bill 127.
127, and basically we can't give out the forms anymore. Or
You wouldn't be able.
has it passed, or is it?
It has not passed. It has been heard in committee. I believe it has been heard in state and local government. And it was one of the bills that was supposed to be brought to the floor recently, but it ended up not being brought. So we're trying to keep an eye on it, but it's just one that I would say keep an eye on. There's several election-related bills. It's absolutely voter suppression.
Yeah.
It basically prohibits voter registration drives.
Yep, that is the intent. And so they will say it's voter security. They keep making this pitch that it's about having more secure elections. That's just not the case at all. We don't have insecure elections in North Carolina. That has not been found to be the case. They're simply trying to make it more difficult to register people to vote. And then lastly, House Bill 5 is a permitless carry bill. They're essentially trying to make it to where if you are 18 years old, don't have a felony, you can go into a store, buy a handgun, and carry it concealed same day. I don't personally believe that is good policy. I've spoken with law enforcement officers, and they don't believe it's good policy. I've spoken with members of my community who also believe it's bad policy. Their rationale behind it is, well, one, Second Amendment, no infringement, that the process to get a concealed carry permit is infringement, but then also that the class itself is unnecessary. I, as a concealed carry permit holder, I own a firearm myself, don't believe that class was unnecessary at all. And I guess it depends on where you go, but at the end of the day, 8 hours of education on not only how to use a firearm, but when to use a firearm and when you were legally covered to use that firearm, I think is a very important thing to know. They kept referencing that anybody can still go train with the firearm if they decide to buy one, but everybody's not lawyers, and nobody really knows how and when you can use a firearm. I've spoken with people, or actually in the concealed carry class, we were going through examples of when you can and cannot use your firearm, and there were so many people that kept getting, myself included, getting the scenarios wrong because you think, oh, somebody's attacking me, and maybe they take a couple of steps back, and you think they're just regrouping, and maybe you have a firearm and you use it on them. That in some cases could reasonably be considered an unjustified shooting, and you may go to jail.
We're not a stand your ground.
And then we're not a standard ground state. So it's like there are a lot of kind of complicated legal issues that I think people should at least be aware of. They don't go through the legalese and the concealed carry permit classes. I don't want to misconstrue it to make it seem like you're going to get a law school education, but they at least touch on the concepts and make sure that you're familiar with generally appropriate times. God forbid you have to use it, that you would be in a legally justifiable position to use your firearm.
Okay, now, could you, just for the sake of us highlighting it in the video, could you state what those bills are you just spoke of? Because I want to know how to direct people to a place where they can learn about what you're talking about, so they're made aware.
So all of these bills you can find on the North Carolina Legislature's website. It's ncleg.gov.gov. Actually, I'm going to sound really nerdy here for a second. I take a lot of time looking at different state legislatures' websites. North Carolina has one of the most impressive websites for our state legislature. It is very easy to navigate. The way you can, like when you, the anti-DEI bills, House Bill 171, for example. If you go to the website at the top right, you'll see a search bar where you can put H171 and hit enter. It'll take you to the page. You can see every version of the bill. If it were to receive a vote on the floor, you can go down to see how many times it was voted on, which amendments were accepted, not accepted, who voted for it. Most importantly, who voted for it, who didn't vote for it. So ncleg.gov is where you would go. The voter registration draft bill was House Bill 127. And then the permitless carry bill was House Bill 5. House Bill 5 has not moved, but the Senate has a version called Senate Bill 50. That bill has actually already passed out of the Senate and the House now holds it. We don't know when or if we're going to take it up. It might be the different chambers use each other's bills sometimes as bargaining tokens for the budget process. They may say, we'll take up your bill if you include this provision in the budget, or we're not going to take up this bill at all because last year you left this thing out of the budget. It can get really petty, but those are those, and I want to open it back up. I know we had a few questions.
Can I?
I think this gentleman in the black sweatshirt, he had a question.
And we caught you right when you eat. Sorry.
So, thank you for the food. Thank you for the food.
Thank you for joining us.
The question is, yeah, thank you. This is informative. So,
Well, we appreciate you being here.
I want to plug this young man right here. So he's already told you that he's one of the youngest in the legislature. Used to be Terry Brown. So, he's made that known. It's like he's been dethroned. But he goes on social media. So he meets people where they are. He has showed up to every event. He meets people where they are. He has videos that he sends out, putting it in plain English. Like, who else takes the time to run down the bills and what they mean to you? That's the kind of thing that's going to get us through. Time out. We got to do something different. If you want to change things, you can't do things the same way. And so anytime, I will get on board and support him, but that's what I need you all to do as well. Talk about Representative Jordan Lopez. And, even if he's not the representative of your area, talk about the things that he is doing, because he represents North Carolina. He represents Mecklenburg County. He's part of that delegation. So make sure you talk about the fact that he is talking about the things that concern us in Raleigh, that he is our true advocate. He's not just saying it during election, because that was the most critical thing that I hear from voters everywhere. Y'all show up right a few months before election. He's out here right now. Drive them to his page. Drive them to, he's giving you the North Carolina General Assembly website, but you can go to his Instagram, you can go to his Facebook, you can go, and see, because he keeps us up to date. I go to his stuff all the time, him and Caleb Tedros.
Yes.
So, make sure that you tell your communities that you guys show up, and we preach to you all the time. You're the choir. Yes, sir.
So I have a background in Christian belief. I grew up in a First of God Christian church, Pentecostal. Would prayer be just fine, Mr. Troy Brown? Pray for you and the political aspirations that suffice as well?
I'll take prayers just the same. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys. Yes, sir.
First is a statement, and the second one is a question. One, before you leave today, could you share your Instagram so we can, share it with our community and people we know we're connected to? All right, that's the first one. And then my question is, you said you were just sworn in earlier this year. Could you speak to some of your goals for your first year? What you hope to accomplish?
My goals have gone through several iterations.
Yeah.
It's like you get there. So I will candidly, I didn't have any opponents when I ran for office. I filed and didn't have a primary or a general election. I had a full year to prepare for what my 2025 would look like. That's part of the reason they elected me to be their co-chair, because they were like, you've been doing the work of being a representative already. Like you halfway know the job.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a ton of goals. I thought I was going to do 17 different things. And then I got sworn in, and I have not known a day of, not peace, that was going to be dramatic, but it has been nonstop.
Yeah.
And so those 17 things that I wanted to focus on turned into 10. And then we got to February and committee work really got into it, and those 10 things turned into 5. And then we got to bill drafting, because you only get we only were able to start drafting bills on January 28th or 29th, one of those 2 days. And we had until early March to get all of our bills requested and drafted. And then we had until April, was that 18th or 17th, to get all of those bills filed, our bill filing deadline. So you have really less than 3 months to request your bills, to draft your bills, to file them. And what I thought was going to be so easy to just, I'm going to do a bill to legalize marijuana, which I did prioritize, and I did file that bill. There's a bunch more, and we can talk about that in a second. I did want to file a bill that opted out of the federal ban on drug felons from receiving SNAP benefits. I did file it. That was a priority. I did want to file one on fair and affordable housing, and I did, because it was a priority, but I had so many other things that I wanted to work on that when you're trying to draft at least good legislation, you want to bring people into the process. You want to talk to folks, get their opinions on stuff. That stuff just takes a while. And so it quickly shifted from my goals are to introduce and really work on all of these bills. So I really want to actually just learn more about how the building works. I want to learn more about the relationships that are needed to be successful here. One day in committee, a Republican member, she got up and had mentioned how she had been there for 34 years. I'm 27. She's been there far longer than I've even been alive. And so it took me a few months to realize that my goal for this first session probably, if we're going to be realistic, shouldn't be what am I going to pass? It should probably be what are you going to learn? And so that's been my main goal is let me soak it all in, because there's a lot of information to gain here. Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll take one last statement, and then, because I want to give time for Miss Yvette to share. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
There was a candidate for the governor of the state of North Carolina, I'm 43, so I'm not the oldest. He came out of Charlotte and went to Raleigh, and I think he did a really good job as a Republican for the state of Carolina. You get thoughts on him? Your thoughts about it? I heard I was at the park, Canton Green Park, and there, I heard stuff that he come over there and did stuff with the Black American community. I heard his tenure, there's a balance on the budget, did things in terms of making the state profitable, whatever. And I want your thoughts on all that.
So I will say McCrory he was governor for 4 years between, was it 2012 and 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and he had some successes, and he is from Charlotte. I will say the Republican Party that Governor McCrory represented and was a part of is a lot different than the Republican Party of today. At that time, and we have a member of CMS's intergovernmental relations guy. He's a former state representative. His name is Charles Jeter. He speaks to this often when we communicate about how the Republican Party of yesterday is just not what it is today. I personally have never been a Republican, and I haven't personally aligned with those values. But there are times looking back where I can say, but that was a good idea, or these were at the very least good attempts to do good things. You just don't see that as often anymore. So Governor McCrory is a decent person, decent emphasis, because we did have some things that personally I don't agree with, but you'd be hard pressed to find a Republican as moderate as him nowadays.
Amen. I agree with that.
But I think that was a good question. I mean, there used to be some really reasonable ones, and there may still be, but in this current configuration, it just or current climate, excuse me, that's a rare one to find. But thank you for the opportunity to speak and share some information this morning, and I'll pass it.
We have a real big thing that's going on that I'm so excited that you're going to be a part of, that's going to help inspire a whole new generation of leaders in our community. With that being said, I am extremely appreciative of you guys giving your attention to the parties that are here. And Miss Yvette Townsend, she is going to be sharing with us, and so I'll turn the floor over to her.
Good morning again, everybody. Thank you so much, Reverend Little. I appreciate you putting this on, along with the new North Carolina project. That's one of the organizations I've worked with them before. They were very heavily involved in the Harris campaign and working in rural areas to get the vote out. Again, my name is Yvette Townsend Ingram. You can call me Commish Yvette. Some people just don't like calling me by my first name, so you can say Commish Yvette. But this is, I'll say probably one of the likelier reasons that we are both here is because we're both new and we both have been on the ground before we were elected. So we want to, engage with the people. That's, we want to bring that to the forefront. I bring you greetings from my chair, Mecklenburg County Commissioner for District 4, Mark Jarrell. I will say that Mark is an excellent, actually all of my colleagues on the board are really great. My onboarding was better than any other job that I've had, and I can say that sincerely and honestly. So, as County Commissioner, what do? I'm gonna go run by that really quick. So basically, we cover the policies that affect your services, Parks and Rec, Health and Human Services, your food stamps, your Medicaid, anything having to do with health, vaccinations for kids and things of that nature, greenways, your parks, that kind of thing. Those services, they call it the soft stuff. That's what Board of County Commissioners do. And if you confuse us with City Council, which is more zoning and business and CMPD, we are over the Sheriff's Office. And one of the other more important things that we do as County Commissioner is set the property tax rate. And that's a bit of a contention because of all of the things that Representative Lopez talked about overall with the administration. At some point, we're going to have to raise the property tax rate. We've been in session, that's all we've talked about is how can we not burden the community with property tax. But I'll get into that a little later. I did bring some resource guides to talk about some of the things that are our priorities. A few months back, we sent out a survey. The county sent out a survey, and some of you may have known we're working on trying to do a better job of communication. But we asked you, what is the most important thing that you want us to address during the next budget cycle? And of course, everybody said housing. Housing and food and childcare. Those were the top 3 things. So, while he's in Raleigh working on those things with the rest of the Mecklenburg delegation, my intent has been on aligning our policies and our priorities with what they need so that they can see what we need, but so that they can, if we don't work together collaboratively, we're not going to get anything done. So we will announce our budget priorities with the understanding that we see you, we see the community. It is our goal to get you more involved. So we are trying to be more visible in the community. Commissioner Jarrell and I just had a coffee with commissioners at Pauline's Tea Apothecary off of Wilkinson Boulevard. We had that on Thursday. It was a great success. That was the third session. We had one at Eastway Rec Center, and we had one at Amelie's. And there were lots of people there at all of them. So we understand that people want to talk to us and give us information more than you can the 3 minutes that you get if you come to the public meeting. But we still need you to come there. We need you to show up. That is how you get the attention of lawmakers. That is how you get the attention of anything that you want to change. You have to show up every time. Look at who your representatives are. Make sure if you don't get anything else before you leave here today, I want you to take this to task, giving you an assignment. I'm a former educator. I taught in CMS for 2 years. I want you to know who your precinct chair is, whether your precinct is organized. Today is the Democratic National Convention. I've got them in my ear because I don't want to miss a vote, right? There's lots of things going on that have nothing to do with your welfare. It's all posturing and maneuvering. Everybody is not working for you. Everybody doesn't have the same agenda as we do. So we're fighting that in addition to fighting for you, right? So if you don't get anything else today, you are the leaders. You guys that showed up here today, you may not consider yourself a community leader, but you are. And those of you, you know how this goes. So you have to be the ones to take it back to your other folks. And I don't care who they are. If you only speak to one person in your neighborhood, make sure they're registered to vote. Make sure they got ID, real ID. May 7th is the deadline. Now, there's fervor about that. But unless you're traveling via airplane or you're going into a government building, you got time. You can still get a real ID. You can use your passport. You can use some other things. But those are the things that we're in charge of, making sure that the public has what they need, that the public has the right information, that they have access. Our whole job is to provide you access to the things that you do not have, the services that you do not have. But if you don't tell us, we don't know what services you have and don't have. For instance, knowing, and I meant to say, I'm sorry, I have a Rolodex in my brain and it kind of moves fast sometimes. But the whole point of us having the coffee with commissioners, we wanted to engage one-on-one with the community, get your input, and we also wanted to help small Black businesses because we have that as a priority. That was one of my priorities. So my priorities when I ran was food insecurity, because I live in a zip code that is food insecure. Accelerating the small minority business enterprise, because we have the youngest out of the county has one, and it's the youngest, and we need data. Mental health awareness. I need us to have mental health awareness in our schools. Our babies need help there. I don't understand why, if you have to have a physical to do some things, that your mental health is not included in that. Police officers should be required to take a mental health physical. School teachers definitely need it. And our children need it. From the youngest, that's how you find out what's going on with them so that we can provide the wraparound services that the county provides. So we're trying to move to a more open platform, a more collaborative platform so that we can find out what your needs are, so that we can give you access to the things that you don't have access to. My personal goal, I'm a member of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, have been for several years now, connecting with the churches, because our greatest voting electorate actually are the older Black women. They run Charlotte, y'all. They run Mecklenburg County, if y'all didn't know. But that's one of our largest electorates. So making sure that we meet people where they are and get them the information they need, how they usually receive it. They're not going to be online. They don't go online and get most of their information. They get it through the mail, they get it through the evening news, that kind of thing. Do they know about Political Beat? Are they tuning into that? You know, so making sure that you have access to things. I don't think it's your responsibility to know who I need to contact. Should I contact city council, school board, or I think that whoever you contact, we need to direct you and hold your hand till you get to that service, access. And if you contact me, that's what I'm gonna do. So at this point, rather than tell you, and which is one of my other things, I don't want our people to get residuals. I don't want politicians, elected officials to tell you what we're gonna do for you. I want you to tell me what you need rather than us dictating and creating policy for what we think we can get for you. We have to shift from that. So I will take any kind of questions that you all have, but again, make sure that you know how to show other people precinct name, who your precinct leader is, whether or not it's organized, are you registered to vote? And keeping that up to date, because the other thing of voter suppression is they will remove you from the voter roll and you'll get there and you think you're registered and guess what? You've been purged. Yes, sir.
So I know this is something probably slightly outside of your wheelhouse, but I've talked to friends. This is a place, I've lived in several other states across the Southeast. I'm originally from Alabama. But one thing I know here that definitely needs to be a resource, particularly in the northwestern part of Mecklenburg, and this probably on your radar because this was talked about recently, a lot of historical sites. I know several people at the NAACP are working with you all because they shut it down a couple of years ago because of a variety of reasons. One of the things I've been pitched to friends as something you all should probably be trying to do to help as a resource for that part of Mecklenburg County, not only try to work with the Arts and Science Council on trying to bring something like a Discovery Place Annex out there, but maybe make it as like what the Greensboro Science Center is. Because something very similar to that is in Nashville at a plantation.
So I will say this. It was, I think the first Tuesday of this month. It was brought before the county commission, the plans for LATA. We've changed the name, Plantation, and Lord have mercy, you better not call it Plantation in front of George Dunlap. You will lose your head. But it is the LATA Resource Center or Historic, they're changing the name, but they're also doing a lot of other changes, and they've incorporated feedback from the community for that, and they've included and have been very thoughtful about preserving the Black history. So you can go online, you can listen to that. All of our meetings are recorded. They're public for public consumption. So you can go on there, look at that. I think I can even, if you email me, I can also send you the slide deck for what they plan. And that way you can share it with the rest of the community to say, hey, this is something positive that's coming out of, I asked this question, we made this demand, and now it's happening.
Yeah, because the reason why I say that is because Charlotte is the only city in this state that doesn't have something that is not only teaching the youth ecology, because Science Center in uptown, it does a good job, but you can tell that that's supposed to be something much bigger.
Yeah.
And they're putting that new annex of it over there off the Little Sugar Creek Greenway with a new name and everything, I know. But that's probably the best way to use that while also respecting the history of it with Black folks being out there and historically. But it should be something that will bring people, draw people, because kind of taking on the previous conversations that we've had, they're trying to push tourism as a money maker around the state. It can solve two prongs of our solution. It can bring tourism and small businesses in that Northwest area, can have more people and foot traffic to that new LATA whatever it's gonna be.
Right.
Learn something, learn about the history, your science center or nature center. They already have that Raptor facility out there, so you can just build off of that. In addition to the fact that people in the community could actually use that as a resource to learn stuff. In a time where resources are being more limited for a variety of reasons, people won't have to travel all the way from town, all the way down there to Dilworth or way out to Huntersville because
Well, actually, and I was corrected on this, it is closer to Huntersville, the latter, I think of it being on the west side, D2, but it's actually not. I think it's D3 maybe, because they keep changing the boundary lines, and things of that nature. But you raised an excellent point. One of the things I noticed is that minorities, we don't consider the environment urgent. It's just not urgent enough for us. There's, you're too busy trying to have something, a place to live, some food to put in your mouth, and get your kids educated. Education will always be our first priority.
And the reason, and I know I'm not trying to take up all the time, another reason is it teaches our youth about the environment. Because this isn't a time where there may not be much of an EPA much longer.
Nope.
So you have to know about the environment, and if you put something local and tell people what is the history of the waters out there, what is the history of soil, what went on with the soil and the air.
Any type of regulation, the government, meaning the federal government, and then it filters down to the state, they're trying to strip away any of those regulations that make you safer. And this is, I'm on the Environmental Stewardship Committee. We have committee assignments, and I've been assigned to that committee for the county. It's personal for me because I know the impact. I am originally from West Virginia. I'm a coal miner's daughter and granddaughter. Yep, and I know the song, the words, Loretta Lynn, I love her. Yes, I'm country. Both my grandfather and my father were coal miners, and they both died from cancer at young ages. Life expectancy in West Virginia is not long. I have a 48-year-old cousin, tried to reach out to her to talk to her about our house that's up there. She'd had a stroke. She's 48 years old. She's on dialysis and the kidney failure. The life expectancy is just not long there, and I know that it's because of environmental concerns there. And because of that dirty energy, coal. Hillary Clinton lost West Virginia because she said she was gonna shut down the coal mines, and that was it. Even though coal is no longer a primary source of income in primary industry there, that's all they want to do. So understanding that, if you understand that it goes a long way, just like voting against your own best, it goes a long way towards helping us as electeds move the policy forward. Because the other side, if they see that you upset about something, it's going to get their attention. And if they think they're going to be voted out of office, that's not why a lot of Republicans, these Republicans, have not said anything against the Republican agenda because they're afraid. They're afraid they're not going to get voted back in.
If I could, just sticking on the environmental thing, I could have, but going into detail on the budget would have been a lot. There are a couple of pieces with DEQ, or the state agency tasked with kind of being our environmental stewardship agency or department. One of the things that this budget does is it takes a really big swipe at DEQ. There are several positions and entire offices that have been eliminated within this particular budget. Offices of environmental education, for example. The office of, where did it just go? Well, let's skip that then. Positions assigned to environmental justice. So any EJ priorities, or people making sure that Black and brown communities that traditionally are either zoned or put next to wood pellet manufacturers, for example, out in, I'm blanking in Eastern North Carolina, somewhere where there's a community that's downstream or down the way from a wood pellet factory, where those fumes that kills people. Those positions are assigned with kind of tracking that and enforcing regulations, all gone. Deputy secretary, these are leaders within the department. I actually know one of them very well. His position number specifically was eliminated in the budget Deputy Secretary for Infrastructure and Environmental Assistance, the Deputy Director for Facilities and Health Services. I mean, what you would think are very vital positions within the department to protect not only the environment, but then also health and safety, they're taking a hammer to them primarily because of the words justice or because of the words, I can't think of anything other than the word justice being in there that makes them want to say, oh, we got to get it going. And it's pretty insane. But that, I just want to add that in there from the budget.
No, thank you, I appreciate that.
And the funny thing is, in East North Carolina, they have a history of coal ash. I know all about that, and I was not even here.
Coal ash and those pig farms, that's the thing that comes to mind that I've always remembered. The fumes from those pig farms and what's in the air and in the water so.
You know, I want to capture this moment, and I'm going to stand right next to you and I say this, because I'm aware that this is going out to hundreds and hundreds of people and possibly thousands of people. You know, this is the reason why pancakes in politics and things like this is vitally important. One of my biggest burdens is trying to figure out how to galvanize the community and galvanize people who need to hear the things that you are sharing and that needs to hear the things you're saying in person. What you do every day as a servant of our community, and you, how, if you could share with me, how are you able to connect? Because I'm a newbie here. New North Carolina project is not new, but what I'm doing with Pancakes and Politics and what we're doing is new. How do you get, as a politician, how do you get a connection so that you can galvanize a community that needs to not only be served, but need to rise up and understand its strength, its ability, and its voice? How do you do that? And how are you and how are those, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, but right now I'm speaking from the Democratic side, with this president election that we just had, and the large disparity of people who did not engage, how are you going to galvanize the community to be able to raise them up so that they could hear and then take action?
You raise an excellent question, and I tell you, if I had the singular answer, I think that I would answer something that all of us have been struggling with for some time. One, we don't know our own power. We don't know our strength. We give it away. And galvanizing people is difficult, and it takes on different forms with different generations, and it changes over the years, right? So we spend our time spinning our wheels trying to figure out how to get the information to people. That's part of doing what you need to do. For myself, I've always been in the community. I've always been a servant leader. So I tell people all the time, I don't like politics. I like political science. I like the number and the data and that kind of thing. But the actual act of, manipulation, like he was talking about, a word in a bill has to be changed, or, putting the bill out a few days before you have to vote on it, or a few hours before you have to vote on it. That's the stuff that discourages people from even trying. It's like, what's the point? I've heard a million. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a personal story. I have a sister who has never voted in her life. Never voted in her life. And that was a sore spot. I'm like, how could we have grown up in the same households and have such a different understanding of what our civic responsibilities are? We talk about all the time how we have so many leaders who died for our right to vote. How can you so flagrantly just throw that and callously just throw that away? And it hurt me. It did end up coming to my swearing in, but it hurt that, or I have, family members whose religious points of view don't allow them to vote. So galvanizing those groups of individuals, it's going to take more than just you, Reverend Little. It's going to take all of us working together. When people see that, oh, they think differently, but they're working towards the same thing, that is what I think personally it's going to take. Because now I think, we've got so many constitutional crises that have come about. I think God is now saying, okay, bam, there it is. What you gonna do, So, yes.
I was reading yesterday on the internet. Did you hear about the Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Division, that whole thing?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Something happened, Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, something about it. It's something it closed it out on the internet. So it fell over, something like that. And it was pointing at there's on like the key thing that happened was there was persecution of the Christian right.
I'm not sure. I know that this administration, their whole MO is to cause chaos, confusion, and fear and division. That's why he's issuing all of these executive orders. Our Congresswoman Alma Adams, who represents the 12th district, she just got through speaking. She's in the U.S. Congress, and she talks all the time about the fact that she has colleagues on the other side who just will not speak up, again, because they know what's right, but they are afraid. They won't do what's right. So he's trying to shut down the Department of Education. Why would you shut down the Department of Education? Fine, if you want to, you don't think it works right. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work right and needs to be revamped. You don't shut it down. You don't shut down FEMA. You don't shut down the Department of Education. I had my student loans deferred for the longest. Oh, they're getting ready to kick those back in full force, and there's no loan programs to help you. It's not going by income and things of that nature. I think is next. I'm not even sure yet because I haven't gotten, but I was laid off, so, I had mine deferred. But there's so many things that are destructive that they're trying to rebuild. The Democratic side is trying to rebuild, but it takes time because they've got to go through legal channels to fix what's wrong. Meanwhile, executive orders come down and temporarily they halt funding, they do all of these things.
I did see that with President Trump, with the United States Department of Education. He mentioned also the NEA, National
Education Association.
He was going after the grant writing, because the grant writing get out of him. So I think the USCE and then
There's lots of things that he's doing. He just had another thing that's near and dear to my heart is immigration. People don't think, when you think of immigration, you just think that they're going after Latino. We have a large population of African immigrants, Haitian immigrants here in Mecklenburg County. They just arrested, we have a sheriff's department under the county. Our sheriff McFadden has been targeted because he does try to follow the law, but protect the rights of immigrants. Give them their due process, like they sent the man to I think Venezuela, El Salvador, without due process. And he, never mind whether guilt or innocent, you still are given due process. That's what the United States was built on. They just had, in Wisconsin, a district court judge was just arrested for helping an immigrant, trying to give them their due process. ICE just arrested 4 immigrants uptown Charlotte because they had business with the court, but they showed up to arrest them. ICE did. They're doing tactics like showing up in unmarked clothing and just leading them away.
It's important to acknowledge, and I hate to interrupt, that
No, go ahead.
what you were seeing right now is a very rapid slide towards authoritarianism. And it always sounds like very dramatic when people say it, but this is not that. This is a very rapid deconstruction, if you will, of what our norms have been of our legal apparatus. You started the question off by asking about the DOJ Civil Rights Division. Earlier in his administration, he basically shut it down, but it's still active, and their new division leader is a loyalist to Trump. They have reassigned attorneys that have worked there that have had decades of experience in protecting folks with respect to housing discrimination and health discrimination, enforcing civil rights law. That's what the entire division was created by the Congress to do. And they're now not, those lawyers that were doing that, they're no longer focusing on civil rights issues anymore. They've been replaced by attorneys that are focusing on tracking transgender people because that's become such a massive priority for this administration. They are not following the law, and they're using federal resources really to go after individuals. And it's not a part of the question that you ask, but every single one of these individuals belongs in jail because they are breaking the law. And I'll just take a swing at the question that was posed to about how do you galvanize people to get involved. Personally, I don't have a silver bullet either or a magic bullet. I don't think there is one that exists personally, because I think it depends on who you are, and we're all different, and we all bring different things to the table, and how you engage, how I engage with the community or in my constituency or my colleagues in Raleigh looks a lot different than how somebody else, maybe even similarly positioned and similarly resourced, would engage with their colleagues in their communities, because it all depends on your character, it depends on your personality. But one thing that I've tried to do, and Commissioner Townsend Ingram acknowledged earlier, I try to show up everywhere. If there's one thing that I've gotten throughout the past couple of years of just my involvement, is that showing up is the best way not only to learn about what's going on in your community, but you get to, that's how you build community. That's how you get people to really care. They see your face enough times, and then it's like, oh, that's my guy, or that's my girl, Yvette. But like before we were elected officials, like showing up at everything that we possibly could, showing up at every BPC meeting or every event, everything going on. It's like, oh, that's my girl. Like you build that family, and I think you pull more and more people into it. And it's not something that takes place overnight or over the course of even one election cycle. That takes years of being dedicated to your community to do. And that's, I guess, how I would say I try to do it too. Just I show up, I talk to people, make sure they know what I do and who I am, because now that I have an office that I can try to affect change from, it's important for them to know that. But you just got to show up everywhere. What's up?
Let me add one more thing. The church has always largely been the way that our community shared information and political issues. And I think over time, and I'm not saying your church, but overall, the church has moved away from it because they've been threatened with losing their 501c3 status. So they're afraid to talk about social justice issues because they equate that to danger. You know, I'm going to lose my tax status. Invite me to your church for a Sunday. Have a social justice week, or whatever. Invite the do you know that we have an election coming up? We have an election every single year. We will next be voting on city council and school board. And hopefully there'll be some referendums on there for you to vote on. So again, making sure that you're registered to vote, making sure your neighbors are registered to vote, who's your precinct leader, who's your representatives, what are you going to vote for, look at the issues, look at those people that are running and see if they align with those issues. But invite us.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I'll say.
Now, what I'm going to say while you're still standing here, and while Representative Lopez is still here, this is the reason why we are establishing a series of community resource festivals that we're having. It's important. We have a community resource festival that's taking place on May the 31st. And it's going to be taking place in the Steel Creek community. And our goal is to do at least 4 a year. This year, this is going to be our first one, so we may end up doing at least 2 more this year. But a community resource is standing right here next to you. This is a community resource. He is a community resource, along with the agencies and things that are in place. And part of the reason why the Community Resource Festival is so important to me, Ms. Yvette, is because of what you just said. while in certain platforms like the church, a lot of pastors may be uncomfortable with bringing in a politician in because they don't want to blur the lines. But that's why we pull everybody together for a community resource festival, because the church is a resource in the community.
That's right.
What you do to serve our community on whatever platform politically that you're on, that is a resource. And it's those type of events is the reason why I'm creating these things, and we're creating these things to give the community a chance to find out what's going on, to find out what's important that they need. And that's why I welcome both of you. And I will get information to both of you, because I would love for you guys to appear at that event. And we're expecting 200 to 300 people at least to show up. But they need to know that you are a resource on the state level, on the local level. And
Tell everybody the name of your church so that.
I'm a pastor at Life Center International Ministries. And that's located off of Westinghouse Boulevard, between Westinghouse and South Tryon. And so that's the ministry that I'm a part of. But I just wanted to step in and say, to mention that about the Community Resource Festival, because whether you are a pastor or whether you are a politician, whether you are a business owner, you are welcome to take part in the Community Resource Festival, because that's the only way we're going to get information out in a collaborative effort to our communities. And so that was just a segue for me to mention the Community Resource Festival that we have coming up, and the importance of you being there. And that's why I want to take a moment to thank you both for coming.
Absolutely.
Because I am a pioneer. I've been a pioneering pastor for 8 years. And when you're pioneering, especially in a time like this, I'm pioneering, you're pioneering, we're all, because the whole political scheme has changed.
Yes, sir.
The whole landscape has changed. We can't look at it the same way we looked at it 10 years ago. Since COVID, everything has changed. How we engage people and what we get people involved in, and even the way we view things from a political standpoint has changed. And so we, those that have come here today, as Ms. Yvette mentioned, please take the information that you have learned, go do some research. Go and figure out how you can better equip and empower yourself to be more aware and prepared to step up and take the necessary steps you need to, so you'll be aware of what's going on. And I'm not talking from a Democratic or Republican standpoint, but as a citizen that's going to be progressive and that's going to be a part of the solution. You have to know where you stand, and you have to know what's out here happening that you may not be aware of, like those bills that he mentioned earlier. We're not aware of what's going on. How can we know what we need to stand up for? Because we're all in a basket together. What affects me affects you.
That's right.
What affects your house affects my house. What affects your part of the city affects my part of the city. Because eventually what's going on this part of the city is going to get to your side of the city. Eventually what's happening in my house may spill out into the street and get to your house. So I just want to thank you guys for coming and giving these two servants, that's why I call them servants.
That's what I
servant
call
leaders,
myself, a servant. That's right.
giving them an opportunity to share. But I am greatly humbled that you who sit
Yes.
here have sat here and given them an opportunity to share and ask questions. So I thank you. And our next Pancakes of Politics next month will take place at the West Boulevard Library.
All right.
And our goal is to kind of pick two places and kind of bounce back and forth. Unfortunately, we would choose a space and stay there forever, but the way this library situation works, you can't only let you
way
do
you
it for
sit
a
up,
little
you-
bit, and you got to go to the next spot. So West Boulevard is where we are going to be. Now I have one question. How did you guys hear about this event?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I was in the library.
Yes.
Pancakes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to reference some of the ways we're communicating this event to see how effective it is.
Yeah, that's
How
good.
did you hear about it?
I just know people.
No, he's a leader.
Okay.
He's precinct chair, and a leader, and that kind of thing.
Word of
so.
mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Mobilize.us.
Mobilize. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you for using
Mobilize.
that.
Did Mobilize send out another announcement this week about this one?
They,
I get a lot, so I'm not sure.
I saw it in my email the other day, but
Oh,
it
you
was
did?
inadvertently because I was registering for something else.
I'm
Okay.
impressed that they're all men. Usually it's more women. So I'm impressed that all you men are here. Thank you so much. I give you kudos for that. Because that's another thing. When we see our men involved, we want to be led by our men. We really do. So I appreciate you for coming out. Like Reverend Little said, I'm grateful for every little inch. This is an inch. There's not a lot of people here, but you are here, and it matters that you're here. So I can't emphasize that enough. You showed up, and I'm confident y'all gonna take what I said to heart. There's resources. There's a pamphlet if you need resources for the county. Some of them have shifted, but it's a fresh list.
You gave me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can pull that out, take it to your folks. It's a list of resources. I think there's some food resources on there. Nourish Up, like I said, that stuff right there. So these are advisory boards that we would love for you guys to be a part of. There's some advisory boards. Yep, pass those back. I probably have just enough for the folks here. But this also is, this is the resource guide I was telling you about. So agencies that you need to call for anything, those are right here as well. Take one of these. And thank you all again. This has been wonderful. I love educating. Like I said, I'm a former educator. Once an educator, always an educator.
Guys, we do have to take this room back around and clear space for, I guess, whoever's gonna come in here next. But thank you guys so much, and keep your looking to Mobilize. Because we will be at West Boulevard Library next month. Thank you guys so much for coming.
I got a grant I'm working on.